Metacognition is often described as thinking about thinking, but that phrase is too vague to be useful. In practice, metacognition is the internal system that determines how accurately you judge your own understanding, how efficiently you learn, and how effectively you adapt when your current approach fails. Two people can spend the same amount of time studying, working, or problem solving, yet one improves rapidly while the other stagnates. The difference is rarely intelligence. It is almost always metacognition. Metacognition is not a single skill. It operates across distinct levels, each one adding a deeper layer of awareness, control, and correction. These levels build on one another. If a level is weak or missing, thinking becomes inefficient, biased, or overconfident. Understanding these levels is essential for anyone who wants to learn faster, think more clearly, and make better decisions in complex environments. The first level is cognition itself, often called object-level thinking. This is the most basic form of mental activity, and the one people use almost constantly. At this level, the mind is focused entirely on performing a task or processing information. You are reading words, solving a problem, listening to someone speak, recalling information, or reacting emotionally to a situation. Your attention is directed outward toward the content, not inward toward your mental process. Cognition is necessary because it is where all thinking happens, but it is also limited. When you operate only at this level, you have no reliable way to detect misunderstanding. If something feels familiar, you assume you understand it. If an answer comes to mind quickly, you assume it is correct. Mistakes are usually discovered only after consequences appear, such as a wrong answer, poor performance, or negative feedback. Many people never move beyond this level, which is why they repeat the same errors despite effort and experience. Cognition without oversight is execution without accuracy. The second level is metacognitive awareness. This is the point where you begin to notice your own mental state while thinking. Instead of being completely absorbed in the task, part of your attention shifts inward. You become aware of whether you are confused, distracted, guessing, or genuinely understanding. You may notice that you are reading without absorbing meaning, or that your confidence does not match your actual knowledge. Metacognitive awareness does not automatically improve performance, but it is essential because it reveals problems that would otherwise remain hidden. At this level, you can recognize uncertainty instead of mistaking it for understanding. You can detect when emotions are influencing your judgment. You can notice when attention drifts or when mental fatigue sets in. This awareness answers a critical question: what is happening in my mind right now? Without awareness, there is no possibility of correction. With awareness, improvement becomes possible, even if it has not yet occurred. The third level is metacognitive knowledge, which involves understanding how your own thinking tends to work across situations. This is not moment-to-moment awareness, but accumulated insight. At this level, you know which strategies help you learn effectively and which ones waste time. You understand your cognitive strengths and limitations. You recognize patterns in your mistakes and the conditions under which they appear. Metacognitive knowledge allows you to predict performance instead of being surprised by it. For example, you may know that passive rereading creates false confidence, while active recall exposes gaps in understanding. You may understand that you perform poorly under time pressure, unless you practice retrieval beforehand. You may recognize that multitasking reduces accuracy, even when it feels productive. This level transforms learning from trial and error into a structured process. Instead of asking why something did not work after the fact, you begin to anticipate what will or will not work before you begin. The fourth level is metacognitive regulation, which is where metacognition becomes active and powerful. Regulation is the ability to deliberately plan, monitor, and adjust thinking in real time. At this level, you do not merely notice confusion, you respond to it. You do not merely know which strategies work. You choose them intentionally and abandon them when they fail. Metacognitive regulation involves deciding how to approach a task before starting, checking progress while working, and making adjustments as needed. If comprehension drops, you slow down or change methods. If a strategy produces poor results, you replace it rather than persisting out of habit. This level allows correction during execution instead of after failure. It is the difference between reactive thinking and adaptive thinking. People with strong metacognitive regulation waste less effort because they stop doing ineffective work sooner and redirect their energy strategically. The fifth and highest level is meta-metacognition, sometimes described as reflective self-monitoring. This level involves evaluating the accuracy of your own metacognitive processes. In other words, you reflect not just on your thinking, but on how well you assess and regulate that thinking over time. This level is rare because it requires questioning your own self-judgment, including your confidence in your ability to self-correct. At this level, you examine whether your preferred strategies are still valid or whether they have become outdated habits. You question whether your self-assessments are accurate or inflated. You recognize that even reflection can be biased and incomplete. Meta-metacognition prevents long-term stagnation by forcing periodic recalibration of the entire cognitive system. Without it, people often plateau while believing they are improving. With it, learning remains flexible, responsive, and aligned with reality. These levels do not function independently. They form a hierarchy in which each level depends on the ones below it. Cognition provides raw thinking. Awareness reveals its state. Knowledge explains its patterns. Regulation controls its direction. Meta-metacognition audits the entire system. Weakness at any level undermines the whole structure. Awareness without regulation leads to recognized problems that never change. Regulation without knowledge leads to random adjustments. Knowledge without awareness leads to misapplied strategies. True cognitive strength requires integration across all levels. For people between the ages of 18 and 35, metacognition is especially critical. This stage of life involves rapid learning, career development, and frequent decision-making under uncertainty. Information is abundant, but attention and accuracy are limited. Metacognition determines whether effort compounds into skill or dissolves into frustration. It affects how quickly you acquire complex abilities, how well you adapt to new environments, and how accurately you judge your own competence. Metacognition also protects against cognitive traps common in modern life. Overconfidence fueled by surface familiarity, manipulation through emotional framing, and burnout caused by inefficient effort all stem from weak metacognitive control. Developing metacognition is not about becoming overly introspective or slowing down thought. It is about increasing precision. It allows you to detect errors earlier, adjust faster, and allocate mental resources where they matter most. Ultimately, the goal of metacognition is not to think more, but to think better. It transforms intelligence from a fixed trait into a self-correcting system. When metacognition is fully developed, learning becomes efficient, mistakes become informative, and adaptation becomes continuous. You no longer rely on hope, talent, or repetition. You rely on awareness, control, and accurate self-evaluation. Most people invest heavily in tools, information, and techniques while neglecting the mind that uses them. Metacognition is the upgrade to that mind. Understanding its levels gives you a map. Practicing them gives you leverage. That leverage is what turns effort into progress and thinking into mastery. Metacognition is the skill that upgrades every other skill you use. If this breakdown clarified how you think and learn, share your insight in the comments. Let us know which level challenged you most, and subscribe for more focused, high-value thinking frameworks.